Welcome back, everybody. We're going to finish out the first half of this chapter with graphing standard form of quadratic functions. Pause the video for a moment to write down your vocabulary. All right, we're going to start with finding the different parts of a standard form equations. We want the axis of symmetry, the y-intercept, and the vertex. I'm going to label A, B, and C. Remember, your y-intercept is your C value, which if we plugged in 0, because remember, on a y-intercept, your x value is 0. So if we plugged in f of 0, 2 times 0 squared plus 8 times 0 minus 1 would still give us that negative 1. So that's why we're able to say whatever the C value is your y-intercept. We have 0, negative 1. Now for the axis of symmetry and the vertex, we have to use the vertex formula. You start with x equals negative b over 2a. So our b value is 8 and our a value is 2. That's a negative 8 over 4, which is negative 2. Your axis of symmetry then is x equals negative 2, and the x value of our vertex is x equals negative 2. To find the y value, we plug in negative 2 to our equation. So 2 times x squared plus 8 times x minus 1. You can plug all of this into your calculator or do the math in your head, and we come out with an answer of negative 9. So our vertex is at 2, negative 9. Letter B. There's nothing in front of the x squared, so we're going to fill in a 1. So our a value is 1, our b value is negative 6, and our c value is 4. Our y-intercept then is at 0, 4, because c is positive 4. Again, for our axis of symmetry and our vertex, we start with our vertex formula. X equals negative b over 2a. The negative is part of the equation for this first one. And then our b value is negative 6. Both those negatives have to be there because it affects the sign of our answer. A negative 6 is actually positive 6. 2 times 1 is 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. That makes our axis of symmetry x is equal to 3. And our vertex is 3. To find the y value of that vertex, we plug in 3 to our equation. 3 squared minus 6 times 3 plus 4. Do this math, and we end up with an answer of negative 5. So our vertex for that would be 3, negative 5. And this last one, our a value is 3, b value is 6, c value is negative 7. That makes our y-intercept 0, negative 7. Axis of symmetry and vertex. Start with vertex formula. We have x equals negative b over 2a. That's negative 6 over 6, which is negative 1. Our axis of symmetry is x equals negative 1. The x value of our vertex is negative 1. Plug negative 1 into our function. 6 times negative 1 minus 7. Do all that math, and we get negative 10. I'm going to skip over those U tries and go to example 2. So remember, the minimum or the maximum value is the y value of the vertex. So max or min value. Well, I'm looking at A. A is negative 4. So we are finding a max value. Oh, sorry about that. Because A is negative. To find the max value, we have to start with our vertex formula. We have x equals negative b over 2a. That's positive 24 over negative 8, which is negative 3. And then we plug that negative 3 into our function. So f of negative 3, it's negative 4 times negative 3 squared minus 24 times negative 3 minus 19. All of this math in our calculator. And we end up with 17. So our maximum value is 17. Our next example, here is our A value. This will be a minimum because that A value is positive. To find that minimum value, we start with x equals negative b, which is negative 0.37 over 2 times a. Be careful with your zeros there. And so I'm just going to do that math in my calculator. Negative makes that a positive. And I'm going to round it. And so I'm going to say that's roughly about 1887.76. So I'm going to plug this into my function. And round that answer, when I plug that in, we get 202.77. So our minimum value is roughly about 203 if they asked us to round it. This last one, our A value is here at negative 16. That means we are finding a maximum value because A is negative. To find that max value, we have x is equal to negative b over 2a. And that is going to give us an answer of 2.5. If I plug in 2.5 to our calculator in that equation, I end up with 105 for an answer. So our max value is 105. If you would please go ahead and try the U-Try 4 and 5. All right, let's try a couple of graphs. I'm going to start with finding the vertex. So x equals negative b over 2a, which gives us 6 over 6 or 1. So the x value of our vertex is 1. That means our axis of symmetry is that x is equal to 1. And then if I plug in 1 to our g function and I do that math, I get 2 for an answer. So our vertex is at 1, 2. That means 1, 2 is going to be the middle of my xy table. So then I'll go 0, -1, 2, and 3. And remember, you only need to do either the 2 and the 3 or the 0 and the -1 because our parabola values repeat on either side of the vertex. If I plug in 0, f of 0, into this equation, we get 5. I'm sorry, this is g. We have g of -1. Plug that in, do that math, we get 14. I'm graphing this. I have 1, 2, 0, 5. -1, 14's way up here. And then I have 2, 5. And 3, 14 way up there. Here is my parabola. We are opening up. That makes this vertex a minimum. Our y-intercept is at 0, 5. We have no x-intercepts. This graph does not cross the x-axis. That also means that we don't have any real zeros because x-intercepts and real zeros are the same thing. And if there aren't any x-intercepts, I can't have any real zeros. Our domain is -infinity to infinity. And our range, we have y. We're opening up, so that's greater than or equal to. And the y value of our vertex is 2. All right, I made a typo in this. If you could please add an x after that 10 so that it's -5x squared minus 10x minus 2. Thank you. And I'm going to again start with finding our vertex. Let's change colors here. So x equals -b over 2a. That's 10 over -10, which is -1. So we have -1 for the x value of our vertex and -1 for our axis of symmetry. Now if I plug -1 into our function, we get 3. So our vertex is at -1, 3. So I'm going to do 2 below and 2 above. I'm going to plug in 0. When I plug in 0 to my function, I get -2. Then I'm going to plug in 1. And I get -17. So those are repeating as well. If I graph this, -1, 3 is up here. -2, -2. 0, -2. And -17 is way down here. Way down here. There we go. This is opening down, which makes our vertex a maximum. Our y-intercept is at 0, -2. Our x-intercepts, we have them, but they're decimals, so I'm not going to jot those down. Do we have real zeros, though? Do we have x-intercepts? We do. We have 2 of them. We have 1 here and 1 there. And so there are 2 real zeros. Our domain is negative infinity to infinity. Our range, the direction is down, so less than or equal to, and the y value of our vertex is 3. And that's it. Thanks again for joining me. Appreciate it. Have a great rest of your night.